All right, guys. So in case you don't know, we are an affiliate for Soldier Girl Coffee Company. I'm super excited about this because they have amazing coffee. And in future episodes, you will see us drinking Soldier Girl coffee. They also have a CBD coffee. So if you need some CBD, which helps support your health in a sense of relaxation, it helps with your sleep and your overall health on a day-to-day basis, then Soldier Girl Coffee has both that and the caffeine you need. So be sure to check out the link in the show notes. Go ahead and click that, shop around, and make sure you get yourself some Soldier Girl Coffee today.
Welcome to the Business and Brews podcast, where our mission is to highlight local businesses and shed light on different industries.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Business and Brews show. I, of course, am Ryan and am super excited to have Peter with me today. Peter, really quick, tell us who you are and what you do.
So Peter Richon, I'm a financial investment retirement planner. If folks know the name Dave Ramsey, I'm a Dave Ramsey SmartVestor Pro. I'm one of the ones in this area. I think I'm the closest in Fuquay, basically to Fayetteville and all the way up to Apex. Help people formulate plans to achieve their financial goals, manage the investments, the accounts, the retirement accounts, and help them make the transition to retirement. And have been doing this for a little bit more than a decade and a half, was the vice president of another firm formerly, and then formed my own firm here in Fuquay. I actually formed the company in 2013, but moved to Fuquay full-time in 2015.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
So 10 years. So you're about to retire then too, right?
It'd be nice. No, I was joking with somebody earlier. I looked back over my Social Security statement, and I got a little bit more than 2.5 decades of income records now. So only like 3 more decades, and I'm there.
Okay. Well, that's awesome, man. Because I think that's super important. I mean, in the military, we had people that would come in and talk to us about that stuff, because it's all different on that side. Plus, when you're 18 years old, you don't know how to tie your shoes. So.
Yeah, you need, especially on the financial side, some good mentorship and education on why it's important to save. I've had a radio program down in Fayetteville. 640 WFMC is the station, news talk down in Fayetteville. And I've been broadcasting down there probably since 2006, 2007, talking about financial retirement planning. And so I've had a lot of military families and military clients throughout the years, and then being the SmartVestor Pro for the Fayetteville area as well, deal with, the TSP plan and the military retirement, and even get into, VAs and disability benefits and how to work those into kind of the financial plan. But unfortunately, yeah, you're right. A lot of the young guys, they get in, the money's coming in, and there's nice cars, nice bikes, motorcycles, and not a lot gets put into savings because they think, I've got this retirement here. Saving for myself isn't going to be super important, but it really is. I mean, the better older system for military retirement replaced your 50%. Now they're only doing 40%, but you get that 5% TSP match, kind of like a 401k kind of thing. Take advantage where you can.
So
definitely. Coaching, I think, at any age, but especially for young people, is important financially. I learned a lot of lessons from my mom. Single parent teacher household. So making ends meet at the end of the month wasn't always the easiest thing. And, dad helped out with child support and that kind of stuff, but still, teacher's income, not always easy to manage. And she'd balance her checkbook and have me right along there and say, see, this is how much you cost me this month. And this is why I can't go buy that new thing for you. So, learning that at a young age, I think helped bring me along. Not that I didn't have a whole book of stupid things that I did with money along the way, but by the time I was getting out of college and first came across Dave Ramsey when he was touring the country, and I was running the board at a radio station at that point in time, and got to listen to him, I was like, this guy's pretty smart. Cut up the credit cards, don't go into debt, simple steps for managing your money, and continued learning, but also started coaching others on how to manage theirs.
That's pretty cool. We actually had Judd from Pulse FM on a while back. That was pretty fun because he let us go up there and set up in the studio.
Yeah.
So yours is like your station is kind of like that. You just sit down in front of a microphone.
So Pulse is actually in a hallway at Curtis Media Group, and I ran 4 of those stations. Like it seems like a lifetime ago now, but I was program director, operations manager for 680 AM WPTF, 570 AM, 620 AM. Those are like the Durham and Raleigh simulcast stations. One's the Durham Bulls, one's the Mudcats, or at least was at the time. I think they've switched formats. And then a station out in Goldsboro. And I was the program director for stategovernmentradio.com. So that building's really interesting because there's like 10 radio stations all along a hallway. And then there's like 6 closets that have more radio stations that are basically run off of the computer in a closet. Yeah. But a lot of fun, the backside of production. I could actually trace where I am today from a love of music growing up. I moved to North Carolina and didn't have a whole lot of friends, but had my radio, and I used to listen to the radio and call up the station and ask to be a guest DJ and introduce the next song. And I'd sit there and record it on a tape, and then I had my dual tape decks, and I'd edit it back and forth, and I had this whole reel of me being a DJ. Flash forward about 15, 20 years from that, went to school for that and graduated and ended up running 4 talk radio stations. So the irony of getting into talk when music is what brought me to it. But from there, I actually hosted a number of financial kind of infomercials. If you hear the weekend lineup of financial shows on all of the talk stations, I've probably produced those shows at some point in time or hosted them at some point in time. And then not too far into the radio career, I realized that the earning potential there isn't super upward mobility unless you are willing to bounce around to New York or Chicago or LA. And I was told so by the president of that company. He's like, you should move there, but if you don't make it, I'll pay for your bus ticket back. All right, appreciate it. You got my 2-week notice, and great opportunities there. But it really gave me the foundation to then transition to becoming a financial advisor. For the first several years, I was actually still producing shows for other financial advisors across the country. I was on like 150 stations at one point in time every week. Yeah, I had like 60 advisors that I was hosting shows for.
That's crazy. Yeah. So you have a show right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So Planning Matters Radio is the name of the program. It's broadcast in like the Northern Wake County area on the Truth cluster of stations.
Yeah. And then, of course, people can find it on like Heart Radio and stuff.
Yep.
I figure most radio stations at this point are...
you'd be surprised. Like, I think most of the stations understand the value of it, but they're not necessarily driving people to the podcasting because they're still a little afraid of losing their grip, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at television viewership, it's down, but video viewership is way up. We're doing it on a cell phone. Newspaper readership is way down, but people read more news than ever. And the same is true for radio. It still reaches more than 90% of the working American public every week.
Say the name of your show again.
Planning Matters Radio.
Because I'm going to look it up there. There's like one reason I do this show. I have an addiction where I cannot get enough content.
Awesome.
So I'm either listening on my headphones and there is a hefty amount of politics in there.
Yep.
But the other side of it is business. I'm the nerd that listens to my own podcast.
Okay.
And it's a little bit for feedback, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, was that good? Was it not good? Is there anything I can pick up in here for motivation today?
Right.
Yeah. So I'm probably going to listen to your podcast.
Cool. Please do. Yeah. Subscribe, like, share, all that. Yeah. But one of the most painful experiences of my entire professional career was doing what's called an air check. It's where your boss or higher up sits with you and makes you listen to your own content and then critiques it as you go. You said here, you said there, you need to cut that. It's painful. Like they will critique literally everything you say. You didn't keep it moving. You didn't preview the next thing that was coming up after the break. And it probably helped me improve my on-air presence more than any other experience, right? Those painful things that we go through teach us more than the easy times a lot. And yeah, I can still remember that was not a pleasant experience, but helped me with the on-air presence. So you're not the only nerd that goes back and listens to their stuff. I do it too.
I think I kind of prefer my method where I just listen to it. But
right.
I guess if I ever want someone to sit beside me, I can just call you up.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, come tell me.
We'd be happy to do it. Yeah.
Having been in the Army, I think I would almost expect you to yell at me while we're doing it. But.
I take the softer approach. Maybe you could do this a little different, or here's where something needs to tweak to build interest.
That's interesting though, because I guess I never really thought of that. But your boss comes in and you get the feedback.
Or if you have an honest friend.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes a friend will tell you, "Oh, it's great," and then say, "That was terrible." That was painful listening to. But if you have an honest friend that's going to shoot it to you straight, maybe a relative, a sibling that isn't afraid to tell you like it is, air checks.
So, what is the main premise of your show, or do you have guests on? Is it just you? What does it look like?
A little bit of both. There are some that are just me kind of monologuing for a half hour. I find that it's hard to hold attention. If it's a half hour monologue, very few people can just talk by themselves for long periods of time and stay entertaining. And finance is a pretty dry topic as it is anyway. So I try to bring guests on for a different perspective. Over the past few years, I've had some of my favorites. Ed Slott, he is a really well-known CPA. He actually hosts the leading fundraising special on PBS every year. It's called Don't Worry, Retire Happy. And he basically tells people with money to donate to charities how to do that and also receive the maximum tax deduction. So it works well for PBS and it works well for Ed Slott. He talked in depth about some strategies to save money, not this year, not last year, but over your lifetime on taxes. That was a pretty good recent episode. I had David Walker on. He was the former Comptroller General of the United States. It's basically the person that signs the checks for our country. And he resigned that position because he wasn't getting anywhere in Washington, telling them that they needed to be more fiscally responsible. Go figure. Right? And he went on a bus tour to see if the American public would actually understand that message. And during that time, he came on the program and talked about that, yes, the American public actually gets it more than the yahoos up in Washington that are making the policy and spending the money, and that if the politicians would just shoot it to the people straight and get serious about being responsible, that we would take whatever changes, we could accept it as long as we knew it would have results. And so he talked about that, as well as what he was doing personally for his planning to make sure that regardless of what goes on as a country fiscally, he will be okay. So that was kind of a cool perspective from somebody who's worried about inflation, worried about taxes, worried about kind of monetary and fiscal policy. I've had other authors on. Tom Hegna is a big one. David Gaylor is a big one. Both of them are kind of best-selling authors in the financial world. Probably not names that everybody knows, but in the financial world, they're pretty well known. So all good episodes if you want a few, to start with. Yeah. Look for some of the interviews.
Well, I'll put them on 2 times the speed, so I'm soaking up like a sponge.
Yeah, watch my videos that way, listen to my podcast that way. Yeah, love it.
So, but you're talking about all the authors, but you actually wrote a book.
Yeah. So I wrote Understanding Your Investment Options, and it's the most important book you'll read this year. It actually says boring, but boring is crossed out. It is important stuff. If you've got insomnia, that's your cure. But if you want to understand the difference between a checking account or a savings account, why would you use the different two? It explains that and what each one is really purposed for. If you want to understand the difference between an ETF and a mutual fund, or term life insurance and whole life insurance, or index universal life insurance, why are there so many different types of life insurance? There's a chapter, you go to the table of contents, you see which investment option you want to know a little bit more about. You read 3 to 10 pages on that, and you'll have a pretty good understanding to be able to have an informed conversation. And I give a little rating of what they're used for and what kind of risk you are exposing yourself to by choosing that particular option.
Okay. So now I kind of want to get into what it is you actually do.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like it's kind of cool because it sounds like you get an opportunity to help a lot of people. But when someone comes to you or you get introduced or whatever, like at the beginning of the relationship, like what does that look like, and what are some of the things you can do to help people?
So first, helping people, probably the best part of my job.
Yeah.
Like not everybody has a fantastic grip on their money, and I try to help them get better understanding. And the conversation usually starts with not even a discussion of the money itself, but like your goals. Because money's a great thing. It's important, but it's not the most important thing. It is a tool to support what is important to you. And what's important to you is different than what's important to your neighbor, or what's important to me is different than what's important to my brother. Everybody's got slightly different goals, and some of them are pretty similar. I want enough money to be confident and live the way that I want to live, right? Okay, so what way do you want to live? What does that look like to you now, 5 years from now, 10 years, 20 years from now? Let's really think about this. Most people haven't thought about that, right? They have not really planned further than I was told I need to save, so I elected 10% of my 401k. Well, that's fantastic, but what is that money doing for you? Why are you doing it? Like, when do you want to stop trading time for money and retire? And, then what are you doing with that money to make sure that it's there to replace that paycheck?
Yeah.
And so that's really the process. For the first, I'd say, good portion of my financial career, 10 years, I was dealing almost exclusively with people who were within the 5-year window of making the transition to retirement.
Mm.
And for the most part, I was helping them keep their money safe, like removing it from the stock market risk, a lot of insurance and annuities and those kind of things, which 2007, 2008, I was all of those people's hero because they didn't lose anything. But then 2009 through like 2013, 14, 15, as the market was bouncing back up, they were like, well, I'm not making as much. Well, that's because this is a safe option. That's really, you didn't lose. You don't have to make as much to stay ahead. But really over the course of, especially since I did officially align with Dave Ramsey and become that SmartVestor Pro, I've dealt with more younger folks who are looking to figure out how to build that large retirement nest egg. And so getting going, how do I invest? Do I defer paying taxes? Do I pay taxes up front? How much do I need to invest? Some folks I'm helping them get out of debt. That is probably not a conversation where I end up bringing on a client, but it's the important foundation to one day become a client. So I'm willing to help them get there. They want to get out of debt. I want you to get out of debt so one day we can start investing money and building wealth.
Yeah. So
really kind of across the spectrum, but I would say if I have a niche, it's helping people make the transition to retirement. Like you've done a good job in saving. You've worked real hard. You've been blessed. You've been diligent. You've been lucky or hardworking enough to earn a good living, and you saved a good amount in those retirement accounts. Now, how do you stop working? How do you transition that into supporting your lifestyle? And we're taught a lot by Wall Street, like, okay, invest, good growth stock mutual funds, growth and income international, whatever the split is. Okay, fantastic, but your paycheck supports your ability to invest.
Yeah.
You walk away from the paycheck, the investment supporting the ability to have a paycheck, right? There's an old saying, you repeat the same behavior over and over and expect a different result.
Yeah.
Is the definition of insanity, right? Well, doing something that is a complete opposite behavior and expecting the same result is just about as insane.
So in other words, if I make, $1,000 a week on a paycheck and I am investing, and then to cut off the proverbial faucet and expect to get that same amount of money without changing anything,
is just insane.
Right.
Okay.
It is. It really is. Because during your working career, while you were earning that paycheck, dips in the market were advantageous to you because you're putting money in, your dollar cost averaging, you're buying those shares of investments at a lower price. Doesn't affect your standard of living so long as you have the paycheck to pay all the bills, right? Well, if the paycheck stops, that dip in the economy that was an advantage before now is money that you're removing at a lower price that doesn't have the chance to recover and inevitably leads to changing your trajectory of retirement completely, if not, unfortunately, like running out of money.
Oh.
So the premise of decreasing risk as you get closer to retirement has been around for a long time, right? The old asset allocation says, well, you start off young, you're very aggressive, maybe 80% in equities and 20% in fixed income. And as you get closer to retirement, the fixed income side of it, the safer side, you have a higher percentage and you have a lower equity exposure. But that was under the premise of that those two things moved inversely. Like when the stock market falls, the bond market holds its value. We haven't seen that to be true. 5 times in the last 21 years now, they've sort of both gone down at the same time. And so the old asset allocation model, what we're seeing is that if we really modernize that for retirement these days, which is much longer, and we don't have pensions, we need a specific income allocation. And that is, let's slice off a piece of the net worth that you've been able to build and replace the paycheck specifically. And then with the rest of the money, we can continue to take that kind of investment risk because just like when you're working, a dip in the market does not affect your ability to pay your bills and meet your standard of living.
Yeah.
So really it's, there's some math processes behind that, but it's let's define your living expenses first. Let's subtract any sources of guaranteed income that your portfolio doesn't have to generate. So pensions, retirement, Social Security, let's subtract those out. Now, how much is left? That's your income gap. That's how much your portfolio is going to have to fill. And there's some old kind of Wall Street premises, they call it the rule of 4%, that tell you, well, how much money does it take to generate that income? And we can follow that and talk about, the assumptions of, well, do you want to generate more, or are you okay with that, and what the cash flow is? But, a lot of math after we talk about the real goals and then drill down on living expenses.
Yeah, that's interesting because I'm still in a stage where we're working on buying a house. I have a plan to never sell a house. Obviously, I have the shows. We're not making millions yet, but
get there
on the road, and those are things I just don't think about. When you get to a certain point, what is my income? What are my expenses? And how do I make that transition? Because it's just interesting to hear you talk about that, because that's definitely something I know I had never really thought about.
Yeah. So when you say never sell a house, is this the house that you're going to live in forever and ever permanently?
So I want to rent. I want to rent houses out. We have a short-term plan for the next 2 years and kind of what that looks like. I also have a cheat code, the VA-backed loan. So we're going to take as much advantage as possible. My fiance is on board. She does have concerns. I have concerns as well.
Sure.
At the end of the day. An absolute failure of that plan kind of looks like us still owning a house.
Perfect.
So it's kind of a win-win no matter how it plays out. But yeah, I don't want to be the next real estate mogul in any way, but I want to own property. Talk to people like you. It's a good idea. So.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned I'm a Dave Ramsey SmartVestor Pro. You mentioned you're familiar with the name Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
So Dave is a huge advocate and fan for real estate.
Yeah.
I am as well. It's a fantastic asset class. I think it's only part of your total financial picture, but it is an asset class that has probably created more millionaires than any other asset class in existence.
Yeah.
Now, I would do it a certain way. I would make sure that your foundation is in place, be debt-free, And really, before getting into the rental part of it, and I know there's 1,000 videos on TikTok or wherever saying no, borrow as much money as possible and leverage to your eyeballs. I get it. That's not the way I personally would go about it. Yeah. There are folks out there that say that's the way to do it, and interest rates are low, so I get it. But there's additional risk with debt. Right. Debt comes with risk. Period. So the way I would do it is be debt free, except for the roof over your own head. Try to pay off the roof over your own head as quick as possible, and then leverage to buy real estate. I meet people who are making that transition into retirement, and they recognize, hey, rental income, fantastic source of income to replace the paycheck. I'm like, well, what's your experience with renting properties? Oh, I have none, but I've got this nest egg. I'm going to go out and buy 6 properties and rent them out. And it's like, Newton's law of motion, objects in motion stay in motion, objects at rest stay at rest. It's kind of the law of real estate too. Like, build it slowly and get that momentum going. Don't just jump into it whole hog all at once. But if you're doing one and it goes well, there's going to be some excess income, the margin, the yield, the mortgage payment that you pay versus the rent that you collect. That should allow you to cash flow and buy another one. And once you got 2, it's easy to get 4. And once you got 4, it's easy to get 8, and so on. Yeah. And some of the most successful people that I've seen, talk to, help formulate their plans, real estate at some point and portion was a part of that plan. So yeah, I like the plan, man. So.
Yeah, so I'm definitely interested because you're exactly right. So I actually have a buddy. He's a Marine veteran. He runs a company. I'll plug him. Chris Griffith. I think he lives in Texas. He runs an organization called Vetted VA, which is for mortgage professionals and loan origination and real estate professionals, where he does exactly that. He vets them. So it's probably similar to what you had to go through with the Dave Ramsey stuff. You have to make sure you're a real person. You're not going to go out here and scam everybody. But it is probably the highest standard in the VA loan space for mortgage and real estate professionals. And I say that, I like the guy. I've actually never met him in person, but I see him, I see his content, I see his conversations and stuff like that. And one of the reasons he did it is because in the military, we have a phrase that's trust but verify. Yeah. And it's like, hey, I know you said you can provide me with real estate or mortgage services, but I'm just going to need you to prove it real quick. And so he takes care of all that. So anybody that comes to that organization is able to get someone to help them that they know isn't going to run a scam on them or anything like that. And so that's his organization. His company is actually called Debt Does Deals. Okay. And so the premise of his company and how he runs business is essentially exactly what you just said, leveraging that debt. Yep. So kind of the opposite of what your approach would be to the same thing. So because I already know that side of it, I want to hear your side of it, because you talked about, and I actually had this conversation last night, you talked about how there's additional risk with debt. Sure. So can you go into a little bit more detail with that?
Yeah. Fantastic conversation. And I can give a couple people you can listen to that are additional examples, and I can give a real life example from one of their lives as a story parable of why. Okay. So there's the Dave Ramsey real estate method, and then there's another thought leader out there, author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. Yeah. So Robert Kiyosaki and Dave Ramsey, their approach to real estate is morally opposed to each other. Robert Kiyosaki is more like your buddy. Use the bank's money, borrow as much as possible, and use the leverage to buy your real estate, which is exactly how Dave Ramsey actually started out. Dave Ramsey, by the time he was like 23 years old, was a multimillionaire. He had, I think, the numbers may be slightly off here, but like $10 million real estate portfolio, multiple houses. And somebody at the bank looked at the balance sheet and said, why do we have $10 million loaned out to a 23-year-old? And called him and said, this 23-year-old guy, he's been paying us, but we need our money back because he's a risk. Loans can be called. And so Dave scrambled. He sold all of his properties, and within the 60-day window, he was able to pay off all of the loans except for like $200,000.
Okay.
Well, that $200,000 forced him into bankruptcy.
Holy smokes.
Right? When you are in debt, you are a slave to the lender.
Of course.
And there's Bible verses about that. And Dave found that out firsthand.
Yeah.
That is why when he claimed bankruptcy, he understood that real estate was a fantastic wealth building asset, but when his family couldn't afford to pay their bills, he said, I'm not going into debt again, and I'm going to formulate a system that teaches other people why not to. And so he built back up a real estate fortune that is, probably unimaginable to most people. I think they just bought like a $30 million building and paid cash for it, something like that, their new Ramsey headquarters. And he's a big fan of paying cash for things. He's got the cash that if he needed a hotel room for the night, he could plop down the cash to just buy the hotel outright. So there are reasons why I understand, people in kind of the real world behave a little differently. But the moral of the story is he was very successful, but the debt undermined it. And so there's some additional risk that comes with debt. 2007, 2008, we saw a different kind of scenario where the values of property fell substantially. And that wasn't just one person, that was a systemic problem. Like the banks got caught up in that one. The ones issuing the debt got caught up in that one. And the collapse of Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns basically was on the back of bad loans that had been issued to people who couldn't pay them. And that's not just one person's example, but within those examples, there were probably, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people that suffered as a result of that owned real estate in one capacity or another, whether it's the roof over my head, my family's security, or the investment property that I bought down there. Banks were scrambling to get repaid. And so they wanted their money back. And if I couldn't afford to pay them right then I lost the property that was paying me that income, right? And even if I said, okay, I want to pay you back, I'll get to you as soon as possible. Well, when you have to fire sale something, you generally don't get the best price, right? In a good market, like what we've been in here recently, I could put my home on the market and within 3 days, I've got 10 offers that are competing with each other that are over asking price. Yeah. In a regular market, I put my home on the market and I wait 30 to 60 days, show it multiple times, and get a fair value for it. But in a fire sale type of situation where somebody's saying, no, you have to pay us back. You can't afford to pay your bills over here because something else in your life has gone wrong. And now it's an emergency. You've got to create capital or cut expenses from somewhere. Well, now I have to sell that property and I have to sell it within, a week, 2 weeks, a month. I'm going to be forced into taking whatever offer comes along. I may not get the right value out of it, right? So Dave's example in his life, the financial collapse kind of is a systemic problem. But the third one is like, what if an emergency comes along in your own life, right? And you've got debt out there, but you suddenly need to come up with either something that slashes your expenses drastically or gives you some capital to go out and handle that emergency. Well, your first thought is, well, I've got these liabilities out there that I owe money on. How can I create some capital with them? You're forced into selling at an inopportune time. You're not going to get the best price for it. So for those three reasons, like my approach would be to not use leverage. And again, I know there's a lot of people out there that are like, yeah, that guy's stupid because I can borrow money right now at less than 2%. I can borrow 15 million and create 25 million in equity with it by buying, duplexes and triplexes and 6-unit apartment buildings or an office building. I get it. But real estate is not guaranteed to hold its value. Yes, it has gone up just like the market has gone up traditionally over time. But there are times where it doesn't. Yeah. And then there are times in our lives where the wrong thing happens at the wrong time. Like when I'm in the planning process with somebody, my job is to sort of be like, Murphy's pessimistic cousin. Like Murphy's Law, what can go wrong will. I'm going to make sure it does, and that it happens right at the most inopportune moment. And if your plan works when that happens, then we're probably confident living life.
Yeah.
But if like we go through that process and we see, no, this is going to lead to financial ruin if this happens, we probably need to back up and examine why.
Yeah.
And then maybe make some changes or some tweaks. And debt is one of those things that causes the wrong thing to happen at the wrong time.
Yeah.
And you don't have the same mentality about your money when you're in debt.
Yeah.
Like money's math, right? Addition, subtraction, that part is the easy part to me. For most people, that part's the easier side of it. But money's also mental and emotional and psychological. And you make different decisions when you're in debt. You panic more. You're under pressure more. You've got to make that payment at a certain point in time. And so really the foundation for, I think, building a solid financial structure is be debt-free, have some of the what-ifs covered, have your legal documents in place, have life insurance, have disability. Let's cover some of the worst-case scenarios that can knock the foundation down, and then we'll start building the walls and build the roof, to complete the architecture analogy here. But,
yeah. No, that makes sense. That's definitely, I mean, I got a buddy down in Florida that talks about that all the time. If you're in debt, then they own you.
Yep.
At the end of the day.
Yep.
So, and what you talked about with like the 2008 stuff, I guess I never really thought about it that way because, your home's value is doing this, but you still owe the bank.
Yep. Yep.
The same amount of money. So it's like at the end of the day, if you own your home and your home's value goes down and you don't sell, it's just like I tell everyone else. They're like, oh no, the market went down. How much did you lose in the market today? And I'm like, nothing. I'm a long-term investor. I didn't sell anything.
Yep.
Now someone who day trades, maybe they lost 5%, 10% in the market.
Yep.
But if you own your home outright and the value goes down and you don't owe the bank, then you don't have a problem. And you still got a roof over your head.
I guess the hard part in 2007 and 2008 was that it happened simultaneously, that a lot of people lost their jobs, lost the paycheck that provided their ability to pay the mortgage at the same time that the housing prices went down.
Yeah.
So now not only can they not afford to pay the mortgage payment, but they're underwater. They actually owe more than the house can sell for.
Yeah.
That was kind of the perfect storm, worst case scenario example. But again, what can go wrong will. And if they had not had other debts, if they were not forced to sell, it would probably have improved that situation. So I look at that and say, if that was the risk, if that was the common factor that put people's financial life and quality of life in jeopardy, what's the solution to avoid it? And it's being debt free.
Yeah.
If my house is paid off, before I go and take out a loan for my next rental property, and the worst case scenario happens and the economy crashes and I lose my job, my house is still paid off. I'll sell the rental property, right? No problem. Let's cut that problem off and get rid of it. But my roof over my head, it's paid for before I'm going out and borrowing money to make investments. And Dave would even go so far as to say, pardon me, don't borrow money at all, even for the investment property.
Yeah.
Save up cash and pay for it outright. I get it. He also kind of is a little bit more lenient and forgiving on having a mortgage on your own home.
Yeah.
So I think that there is a slight bit of wiggle room to be spoken about there, but for the most part, I'm a fan of being debt free.
Yeah.
I know the difference it has made in my own life.
Yeah.
I got out of college and I was in 5-figure credit card debt. Again, I've got a whole book of woulda, coulda, shoulda, stupid mistakes.
Yeah.
But I try not to make the same one twice.
Right.
And clawing my way out of that credit card debt took years at that point in time. I wasn't making a whole lot of money. I was just entering in my career. It was painful. And then this Dave Ramsey guy comes along and I'm running the board for him. And he's like, never go in debt, cut up the credit card, stay out of it. I'm like, this guy's got it going on.
I did all of it wrong.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, this is the playbook I should have been following all along.
That's crazy. That's awesome. So, now I guess I could probably talk about this stuff all day, but I want to transition into some of the more fun questions. We call it the questions we've had brewing.
All right.
So the best one is when you're not doing your radio show, writing your next book, or helping people with their money. What do you like to do for fun?
My son plays baseball.
Okay.
Travel baseball dad. So when I'm not doing work, we're generally going somewhere to play baseball.
Okay.
That's a lot of the free time right there. Make music. I've loved music ever since I was a kid. Again, it kind of could trace my career even till today from that. And I've got artists that I help to promote and distribute their music, and I make music myself.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's kind of my release. I used to think at one point in time it was going to be something that actually was a paying career. Today it's more just I have fun doing it. Yeah. And I have a couple buddies that like to do it too. So we team up and goof around and we'll make some music. But yeah, I mean, spend time with my family, man. That's what's important. A little downtime to breathe and kind of regroup is important. So those are my pastimes and hobbies.
That's cool.
Yeah. I think one day when my son ages out, I'll probably coach some little league or rec league baseball. Just I love the kids. I think the game teaches them a lot. Gives me an opportunity to help, not just baseball, but like there's a lot that can be learned about life on the baseball field.
Yeah. So I played for 9 years with the rec center when I was little. It wasn't. I mean, we traveled a little bit. I wouldn't call it traveling baseball.
It's a totally different game. Yeah. I mean, I played when I was a younger guy. I'm 41. I played, kind of elementary school t-ball all the way up through kid pitch, and it's a totally different thing now. And maybe this existed back then, but my memory is like there were travel soccer teams, but there wasn't really travel baseball. Yeah. Today it's like travel baseball is it. You go out to the ballpark, on any given weekend, and there's 40 teams out there that are competing. Yeah, they got big tournaments. They got multi-field, like 6-12 field facilities. Parents travel all the way up to New York, down to Charleston, down to Florida, out to Tennessee, like on a weekend to have their kid play 4 to 6 baseball games and then travel back and go to work Monday. It's a big thing.
I got tired thinking about it.
Yeah, dude.
Holy
downtime is
like 6 games in a weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're up at 5:30 on Saturday morning.
Can I get a Gatorade or a snack?
Yeah. They got the snack stand. They're making money. They're making money that way too, for sure. Yeah.
Like I'm thinking, like if me or my brother had a tournament, we might have like 2 or 3 games in a day at the rec center down the street.
Yeah. That was what I remember. Right. But yeah, it's different these days. They are serious about their baseball, especially here. Yeah. Like you could throw a rock and hit 5 travel teams from right here. Yeah. In Fuquay. Yeah. At least.
My brother-in-law he loves baseball. I played it and collected the cards. Yeah. But, that was about it. And then I play guitar too. I'm actually not that good. So okay. But it is fun. It is fun. But then working on that car I told you about. So right now,
you don't have to be good to enjoy it.
I might switch back to the guitar for the time being because the car's kind of being a pain in the butt.
Okay, I know that.
They're both still fun, but it's like come on.
Yep.
So if you could have the next question, if you could have a beer with anyone, and it can be dead or alive, who would it be and why?
It's a great question. I mean, I could I could say just regular people that I do have beers with. That's why I have beers with them, because I enjoy having beers with them, right? I don't think Dave drinks. Could be wrong there. But maybe we have a coffee.
Yeah, there you go.
I'd enjoy some of the financial minds and talking with them. I'd like to sit down with Robert Kiyosaki and pick his brain. I'd like to sit down with Dave Ramsey and pick his brain. I'd like to sit down with Warren Buffett and pick his brain. Those are a few of them. It'd always be cool to sit with the president. That kind of thing. I think some of those. I don't know if there's any like historical figure that I'm like, oh, I gotta know what your thought process was when you did this. Yeah. But I think more of the people, Gary V, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. I think those are some of the ones I'd like to know how they tick. Yeah. And probably sitting down with them, having a conversation would be pretty cool.
I feel like Gary Vee and Elon Musk are opposites.
Yeah.
One's very eccentric and extremely outgoing, and the other one is somewhat thoughtful in his replies.
Yeah. Both are a little out there to the extremes on both. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I agree.
I mean, I agree with all of that. I would say if the beer coincided with a conversation like this, Joe Rogan, Jocko Willink, Dan Crenshaw are probably my top 3 picks.
Okay.
I've actually written Joe Rogan and Dan Crenshaw to ask them to come on the show.
Okay.
With zero expectation of a reply.
You don't get what you don't ask for, right?
So, so far my expectations have been met, but I haven't given up either.
Write another letter.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just goes to their secretary inbox or whatever. Sure.
You write enough of them. You ever seen Shawshank Redemption?
Yeah.
Like he wrote a letter every day. Finally, they gave him what he wanted just so he would quit, and then he started writing 2 a day.
Yeah. Yeah. So follow-up question, because I thought of this earlier, but I'm curious. What is Mom's perspective of what you do and where you are now?
I think, at a certain point in time, she was probably just glad I made it. And from there on up, everything else was a bonus of success and pride. I mean, my mom and I have a pretty good relationship. I talk to her a lot. And I think she's pretty happy. Both her boys made it.
Yeah.
Today's world, that unfortunately, that's not every time. I say most of us find our way eventually, but I think she's all right with where I ended up.
Okay. I was just curious because you were like, this was my situation growing up.
Yep.
And now it's a little bit different. So that's always cool.
College is an interesting time. I think for a while she had her doubts.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I'm going over what we already talked about, fun, beers. What book or books are you reading?
So the Bezos letters, I'm reading that one right now. It's kind of Jeff Bezos documenting his thought process.
I didn't know that existed.
Yeah. It's interesting. The advisor's perspective, it was actually written by a buddy of mine, but it talks about how to be more effective in my business, particularly how to identify problems within the business, how those advisors that are successful don't talk about a problem, they act on the problem to solve it, how to execute, how to turn a job into a business, which is kind of my goal for the next year. And when I say that, like I own my own business, but it's a job, right? I show up. I have created a good job for myself. However, if I don't show up, I want to take some personal time, the income stops, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people show up to work and they get paid. I have to show up to work and figure out how to get paid. It's a blessing and a curse. I get to set my own hours, but if I don't work the hours, then I don't get paid.
Yeah.
I would like a business,
Yeah.
right? And my goal for the coming years is to create a business where I can sort of walk away, have a lifestyle, have some personal time, and the business still continues to click and operate.
Yeah.
And so Sean Sparks is the guy's name. He studied advisor businesses for better part of 15, 20 years. And he wrote a book that basically outlined that transition process. So that's
Cool.
That's one that I'm reading a lot, studying. It was written in a really cool format too, because at the end of every chapter, there's kind of like a study guide where you go back and there's like, here are the top questions that you need to have answered from this chapter. How do you answer them? How do you take action on them? So going back through that.
I like it. Awesome. I am, speaking of Dan Crenshaw, rereading Fortitude.
Okay.
Basically talks about why and how to have fortitude, personal courage, personal responsibility. Draws a lot of correlations between civilian life and him being a Navy SEAL. So, yeah, like I really like that book. Another one of my favorites, which I reread occasionally, is the Marshmallow Test. So basically, delayed gratification.
Yeah. That's what they do with the little kids when they say, here's one, I'm going to leave the room.
That study is the premise of the entire book.
Okay.
So, I love that book. I've wanted to do that in real life, but it's really just a matter of finding enough kids and then making sure you don't get all of one type.
Yeah.
My Gavin was like, yeah, mine would just eat the marshmallow right now. I know that right now. I know what type of child he is. He would just eat it right away. So I think that would be pretty entertaining.
Yeah. Well, when one does it, I think the problem with that experiment in a group setting is as soon as one does it, they all do it, right? You got to have them in isolation. And then you really define what type of kid, what the personality type is by how they actually behave as they're doing that. I think that was part of the original Marshmallow Test too, is almost like a, what do they call them? The Colby test, the personality things. Are you doer, thinker, executor, those kind of things. So
definitely. So most important question, if someone wants to get into the industry you're in, be like you when they grow up or needs help, how can people find you?
Man, come see me. I do enjoy what I do. It's a fun profession. Again, I get to help people. That alone is rewarding. And then if you'd like to get into this profession, I'm always looking for young, sharp, talented people that are willing to learn and are willing to, put their mind to something, work hard at it, and then see not only achievement, but success and upward mobility. Because if I can find that person, that's part of my goal, right? I wanted to turn my job into a business. I need people like that want to work and accomplish things, and they're driven by that success. So come see me. I'm at Richon Planning. It's right behind the Biscuitville. Everybody in Fuquay knows where the Biscuitville is. I promise by the line that's wrapped around blocking my way to my office some days. But yeah, we're right behind the Biscuitville. I do have the radio programs and podcasts that we do. So I actually have kind of a separate arm where there's some production going on there too. So if the right person is interested in that side of things and want to be interested in learning the financial side, like there's kind of an interesting creative opportunity in the financial world there too. But if you want help, if you are looking to formulate the plan, if you want to double check the investments, if you want to kind of go over every stone and turn it and make sure nothing has been left unaddressed, give me a call, 919-300-5886. You can go online. The website looks like richonplanning.com. It's my last name, Richon, richonplanning.com. You can search, iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, all the rest for the Planning Matters Radio, Richon Planning Podcast. You can ask Siri and Alexa to play it for you. So, find us and I'd say, right now, if you're worried about the market, if you're worried about inflation, if you're worried about taxes, and that has not been addressed as part of a formal plan, that's really where I'm spending a lot of my time day to day in the office.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you coming out here, man.
Yeah, Ryan, it's been fun. I appreciate the opportunity. The shout out went out on social media. I said, hey, I have offered something kind of similar. Yeah. Just businesses in the area, get the word out, come by, and we'll do something similar. But I like being on this side of it too.
Yeah.
So cool, definitely man. Appreciate it, and we should team up and talk about where yours is going and where mine is going, and if there's some opportunity to work together there.
Absolutely. Well, I guess I should mention, guys, what he's talking about is actually on the website. If you go to contact, it says be a guest on the show. You can just click that. The availability for recording slots is on there. So if you don't see one, they've all been taken. Click next month and find one that works for you. I think this week, is completely scheduled out. And then our next recording stint is in January. So you have plenty of time to get through the holidays, figure it out. But if you're a business owner, entrepreneur, especially if you're local, because we do the virtual ones, but I absolutely love in person. So please feel free to sign up. I look forward to getting that notification that someone has, and check out Peter's website. That'll be in the show notes, as well as a link to your book and your podcast and all the fun stuff. So awesome. Thanks again for being here.
No, awesome. I appreciate the opportunity.
This has been the Business and Brews Show, hosted by yours truly, Ryan Smeltz. Edited and produced by Ryan